Hey everyone, so here's another installment in the brutally honest, good, bad, and ugly. Today we're going to talk about Wilson Audio. I know many of you have been asking me to do it, so here we go. Okay, good, extremely high build quality. I can honestly say I have never ever received a brand new Wilson where there were any issues, any marks, scratches, dead on arrival, missing things. Just been great, just superb. Hardware is impeccably finished, polished. The paint finish is mirror. Just once you take off the paint protection, it is stunning to look at. Speakers are packed in crates which are well made, which can be reused, and also the larger models, they come with the casters underneath, so once you've taken the top off, you can easily slide them out and move the speakers into position. So very, very good. And then the higher models, like I think starting with the Alexia and up, they even come with a jack, a Wilson jack, so you can lift the speakers up and change the wheels out and put the spikes in. Very good manual, very well written, comprehensive, shows you exactly how to install the speakers, how to build it, and where to even put them. And so yeah, very, very good. Full set of tools and accessories. Again, anything that you can probably need or possibly need, it comes with those tools. Next, superb people, and I mean that. Every person I've ever met in the decades and decades of working with Wilson Audio, they've all been exemplary, wonderful people. Laid back, funny, relaxed, passionate about what they do. Just absolutely wonderful group of people. If you ever call Wilson for any particular reason, you will probably talk with Jaron. Jaron is just the nicest, sweetest guy you'll ever want to meet. So, another good. The company keeps really good stock of all their parts. Unless something becomes unavailable and they can no longer get them. And even then, Wilson has been known to make new products out if the manufacturer no longer makes them. So for example, some of the early tweeters that were made for them by Focal were inverted dome, metal dome tweeters. Those are no longer available. So Wilson has gone to the lengths of designing and manufacturing tweeters to replace them, and they'll come when you order them with the matching resistors so that the speakers sound somewhat similar to what they were before. They have resistors to help protect the drivers. So if your amplifier fails and it goes bang, a lot of times you will blow a mid-range or a tweeter. In Wilson's case, because they use resistors, there's a good likelihood that the resistor will fail and protect the drivers in time. Generally speaking, very good resale value. In my experience, Wilsons have very, very good resale value. Certainly competitive with anything that's out there, if not slightly better. Great group of owners. Every Wilson client that I've ever met, just top-notch people. I couldn't think of better, nicer people, and they range anywhere from regular blue-collar, hard-working people to captains of their industry. Just really, really nice people. Okay, next. Exceptional performance. Of course, this is subjective, so I'm talking strictly from my point of view. I've been a Wilson fanboy ever since my first pair back in the late 80s, I want to say, the first original Watts. I fell in love with them, and I continue to love the speakers. Micro and macro dynamics are wonderful. They can do both very, very soft dynamics and then the large scale macro dynamics. Early models, when they were using the metal dome tweeters, were more unforgiving. They were designed to understand this clearly. David Wilson designed those speakers at the time to reproduce what he recorded on his master albums, and so he wanted to reproduce what he heard. And so his speakers were designed to that level of integrity. As time went on, first of all, those tweeters were no longer available. And so he had to replace them with another tweeter. And then secondly, he was also starting to spend a lot of time going to the great halls in Europe. And he talks about this in one or two of his videos. And he started to hear music in a slightly different way, perhaps, and started to evolve and appreciate sound in a slightly different way. And so when he introduced the new silk dome tweeters, the speakers became somewhat slightly more forgiving. Still a lot of detail, but not demanding of the finest electronics as the early models did. One of the things that I love about the Wilsons is that as the speakers have evolved, I have evolved as well. I no longer look for the ultimate in resolution. I look for a system that allows me to enjoy my music, or the vast majority of my music, so long as it's pretty decent recordings. If it's really, really, really poor recording, it's not going to hide that, and frankly neither, and it shouldn't. But at the very least, I can still enjoy relatively poor average recordings to spectacular recordings with Wilsons. They have tremendously good bass for reasonably small size. If you think about, for example, the tune tots, you crank them and the bass will blow you away. The Sabrina X, you set them up the way they're supposed to, and you will wonder, how is it possible this little speaker can produce the kind of bass it does? And then, of course, the large speakers are a whole different level again. The Sabrina X and the Yvette's do not require extremely expensive amplifiers. You could start with parasounds, the decent parasounds with 200 watts per channel with some current. They'll do it, and for $2,000–$3,000, you will get easily some incredibly good sound. The Hagel's integrated amplifiers from the H190 and up will do a wonderful job. And if you don't play your music too loud, the Cayenne tube amplifiers for $2,600 Canadian will blow your mind with the beauty in the mid-range. It's just so with the Yvette and the Sabrina X, they are wonderful speakers that you can spend most of your budget on the speakers and spend substantially less on the electronics. With Wilson, if you follow their setup, they recommend finding the zone of neutrality in your room. You can watch a video done by David Wilson, and he talks about how you find that zone. It's quite easy to do. And once you have that zone, if you put your speakers in the zone, you will have achieved about 80–85% of what is likely in your room. So you don't have to fuss like crazy and wonder about where the speaker should be and so on. If you like what Wilsons can do and their strengths, put them in the zone of neutrality, and you can stop fussing, and you'll start enjoying the music very, very quickly. The bad. Okay, they're costly. They're not inexpensive speakers. The Tune Tot starts at $10,890 US, and that does not include the stands or the ISO bays or any of the accessories. So they're very, very, very expensive in that sense. And again, I want to be careful when I say expensive. Cost or price, or value, I should say, is all relative to the performance. If you know what you want and the speakers do it for you and other speakers don't, then it is a superb value. If, on the other hand, you're strictly looking at numbers and say, well, I'm not going to spend $5,000. Anybody who buys, $10,000 for a simple two-way, you're crazy. Well, then obviously you've got a whole different idea of what value means and cost is. But again, I'm putting it out there just so we're being very transparent. Number two, controversial aesthetics. This is obvious. Some people will look at the Wilsons and absolutely go, that's it. This is perfect for my room. I've got the same kind of taste and so on. And other people will look at the speakers and go, they look like robots. And that's a common comment that I hear. So they are either your particular kind of taste or they're not. Starting from the Sasha V and up, they do require really good electronics with good current. Now again, I hasten to say, it doesn't mean you have to spend a ton of money. But when you do, assuming that the ton of money goes along with great sound, my God, the speakers will just reward you with what you put in front of them. So there's no easy way around that. If you decide you want to go with something like the Sasha V's, be prepared to buy good amplifiers like Macintosh, Spectral, D'Agostino's, the better PS audios and things like this. Be prepared for that. Griffin, name your favorite poison. They will reward you with spectacular front end and electronics. Another bad. You need to know how to tweak the speakers within the zone of neutrality if you're the kind of person that wants to optimize the speakers. In other words, you're not happy with 80-85%. You want to get 90-95%, and you have the time and the patience and so on. You will need to know how to do it. Again, refer back to the David Wilson's video guide. He talks about it, and if you just follow, listen very carefully, take notes, and follow and practice, you will get it done right. Or get your dealer to set it up. Speakers are heavy. Even the little Sabrinas, they're quite heavy, so be careful. Starting from the Yvettes on up, you want to be careful when you're moving the speakers. Otherwise, if you're not careful and move them and they start tilting, you might do something stupid like I have done with heavy amplifiers, try to rescue something and hurt my fingers and overextend them and hurt my elbow. And anyway, you don't need to know that. Ideally, get 1 or 2 friends to come and help you. If you have to move the speakers, if you have bought a new place and you want to move the speakers, hire movers. That's the best advice I can give you. Don't cheap out and think you can do it yourself. If you obviously can, that's great, but if you cannot, hire movers. It's worth it. I mentioned the resistors earlier. This is something I wasn't aware of until Peter McGrath of Wilson Audio told me about it, and I started to experiment, and he was absolutely right. Ideally, every 2 to 3 years, replace the resistors in your speakers. Now, if you play your music a lot and you like to play your music at high levels, this is a good rule of thumb. If you don't play your music all that often and it's usually in medium to low volumes, you may not have to do that. You will hear the speakers improve when you replace the resistors. It is quite surprising that they can do what they do, but they do. So I call it a bad because you have to kind of do that, but keep in mind that at the very least, here's a speaker you can do, whereas with other speakers, there's no way to replace parts inside easily. Another bad, because Wilsons have been made for so many decades, some are quite old, and I've seen some very bad, poor condition speakers. The paints are chipping, there are scratches, and so on. Part of that is due to, in some cases, the speakers being so big, and when you try to move them, inevitably the momentum swings one way and you start hitting something or whatever, or people try to move the speakers and they forget to take off their jewelry or the belt buckle and all these kinds of things. Or when you try to put the modules into the upper locations and you're not careful, you ding the front lip, and these kinds of things do happen. So that's a bit of a bad. More specifically, early models were using drivers that had foam surround. Now, over time, all the foam surrounds will deteriorate. So if you buy some used ones, be very careful. Watch, look at the foam surrounds, make sure they're still in good condition. If they're sticky or if they look like they're cracking, replace them. There's no choice. They will not sound the way they're supposed to. Thankfully, Wilson still has all these parts for the most part, as far as I know. Okay, next one. If you ever have to ship the speakers or move anywhere significant, you must ship them in crates. Ideally the original crates, because they come with custom foam and they're all cut to size and they'll fit properly. But if you don't have those crates anymore and you have to ship them, do not make the mistake to think that they will fit into a cardboard with foam. A lot of the Wilson speakers are very, very heavy, and a typical cardboard with foam is probably not enough. And a lot of times, shipping companies, when they have something heavy, they'll just lift it and try and throw it to minimize or to get momentum, and that can damage the speakers. So either keep the crates or get custom crates made. Last bad. Early models can be quite inexpensive to buy. You could buy Grand Slams, you can buy Maxes, you can buy What Puppies at, again, relatively speaking, reasonable prices. But be aware, I mentioned earlier, the early models were using the titanium dome tweeters, inverted dome tweeters. They are very, very, very clear and can be bright in with bad electronics or bad rooms. I never found them bright myself, just personally, but certainly some people have. So you want to make sure that just because you can afford to buy the speakers, you want to make sure that you have good matching electronics to get the most out of them. Now, when you do, however, the sound will just absolutely reward you, because for the money that you spend, you can get incredible results, especially if you play phenomenal recordings, which is what the early models were intended for. When you play phenomenal recordings, they will blow your mind. They can, I should say. So just be careful. Just because you can afford to buy them doesn't mean that your basic receivers and so on will do a good job. They probably won't. Okay, ugly. Early speakers used foam diffraction pads. If you look at the front of the speakers, there is a pad that is placed on top of the panel to help direct the dispersion of the tweeter in the mid-range. And they were made of foam, and so of course foam over time will deteriorate and they'll get gummy and they'll start flaking off, and it's a mess. To get the most out of those speakers, you have to scrape them all off, order new replacement foam from the factory, and put them back on. Now, the process of scraping is not so easy. The big parts of the foam come off fairly easily. You use a plastic paint scraper and scrape it all off, but you make sure that you cover your floor. Use some paint drop sheets, drop cloths, so that all of that debris gets onto the drop cloth instead of on your floor or on your carpet, God forbid, because it'll be impossible to get them off your carpet. Use some Goo Gone or whatever it is, let it sit for a bit and then scrape it off. Do not let the Goo Gone or denatured alcohol touch your drivers, okay? You could damage your drivers, so be very, 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 very careful. And yes, it will take a lot of scraping and elbow grease to get it all off. Once you've done it, however, and you replace it, it's absolutely beautiful. So yeah, gooey, sticky, not nice. The other thing is that the early grills were made of single cellular, I want to say cellular foam. If you remember, early humidifiers had this roll of foam, and that's what they were made of. Now, some people say, why is Wilson using such cheap stuff, adhered with Velcro? Well, the reason is because back then, again, David Wilson only cared about performance. And he did not find any grill cloths that suited his needs, that were transparent enough. And so he decided that these foam grills were the most unobtrusive, I should say. So that's why he used what he used. And yes, he suffered the slings and arrows and criticisms and so on, but the truth is, they worked. They stopped people from seeing the drivers, and kids, therefore, if they don't see it, they don't poke at it. And obviously, for the best results, you always take them off anyway. Unfortunately, again, because of the material that they were made of, they would deteriorate over time, and thankfully, you can still buy them from the factory. So those are the two uglies. I can't think of any. I'm sure there may be a few others, but honestly, I couldn't think of any. Anyway, hopefully this video has been helpful. Love to read your feedback. Put them in the comments below. If you have any questions, email me info@audioexcellence.ca, and we'll see you the next time. Bye-bye.